Richard Vines, Rare Cancers Australia, thank you for joining me today. Quite a bit going on. What are your expectations for the year coming out of 2022, which was a big year for you?
Yeah, 2022 was great, and to some extent it sort of set us up. We've got two major projects. I mean, we've got Can Forum, which will, where that will manifest. But the first one is something I wanted to do for ages, and it's I loosely classified it as the rarefication of cancer. And what we see all the time when you're talking about cancer is people start with sentences like, as the science has developed, as we've learnt more about cancer, ... and it essentially rolls from there into precision oncology. What we've, I think, failed to do is sit down and prepare a really credible and easily understood explanation of it, what it is that we have learned, and be able to deliver that to politicians, and I think also to bureaucrats, because I think there is an essential issue here that if you can't lay the foundation of knowledge for why you think change is reasonable, then it's unlikely you're going to get it. If you just say, I want, that's different. If you say, I want because, and that's a really important piece of work, and we're hoping, we're calling it a report, but we're very, very committed to doing something a bit exciting, sexy, multimedia with animations, interviews, and to lay the foundation of what cancer is, why it's becoming more rare, why it's becoming more precise or more personalised, and what the consequences, what the logical consequences are there for the health system, for how we're going to embrace new medicines, which are by definition they're going to be more effective, they're going to be probably more expensive, and they're probably going to be targeted at smaller patient populations. There'll be the exceptions, but I think we have to address those, and we have to say, you can't ignore this. This is what's happening.
Where do you see it, having seen those draft terms of reference and the process around them? What is your expectation now?
I think there's a real danger, if we're not careful, that what we'll end up with is a better designed spreadsheet, and that's not going to help anybody. And I think that the way that we should avoid that is that we have to demand, as patient groups and patient representatives, that this is a public inquiry. This is not a private discussion between industry and government. I don't think, I hope nobody wants that, because that can't be allowed to happen. The minister can't allow that. We as patient groups can't allow that. It is, I've been trying to find a way to categorise it, and we have a health crisis in primary care, we have a health crisis in hospitals, and they're all visible. But we have an invisible health crisis in the PBS. And the reason that it's invisible is that you go to the doctor, and he digs into his toolkit, and his toolkit is the PBS, and he finds the best possible option for you. And in simple diseases, straightforward diseases, that's enough. In cancer, the best available in your toolkit is not necessarily the best. And if I said to you, if I was drawing a parallel with COVID, if I said in the last 3 years 150,000 patients have died from COVID, and of all the solutions that are being developed and approved by the FDA in the US, 9 out of 10 of them are available within 2 months in the US, and 4 out of 10 of them are available in Australia sometime after 2 years. We wouldn't accept that, if it was COVID, and yet that's what we accept every day for cancer, and that's just it's not acceptable. It has to be discussed. It has to get better.
But the process itself is very close. I mean, it's not a cabinet process. It's not a budget process. It's simply a discussion about health technology assessment. So why the confidentiality?
Great question. I don't have an answer. I find it confusing and disturbing, because ultimately health technology assessment is something that we as citizens, taxpayers and ultimately patients, rely on to deliver us the best possible treatment that we can. And part of that assessment is a discussion about what's important to us. And what's important to us as Joe Public is, it can't, if it's all cloaked in confidentiality, then we're not going to have that discussion. It refers to transparency, it refers to engagement, and it has to do that. There have to be public consultations, and they have to be meaningful, and they have to be done in a way. I mean, we had, I think there were 60 submissions to the House of Reps inquiry into high-cost medicines from patient groups or research organisations. All of those people had something to say about high-cost medicines, and that's got to form part of this, And I don't think any of them were saying it's perfect.
Do we need something from Mark Butler, the Health Minister, saying this is what I expect out of this review? Yeah,
we wrote to the Minister as a collective. We have a collective, my term, but it's 15 of the top patient groups, cancer patient groups. And we wrote to him with 15 logos, 15 signatures, saying we think this is not something that is a conversation between industry and government. We need to be at the table. And some of us were invited to look at the draft terms of reference, but we haven't been in the room with him yet, and that's overdue, and it has to be. And we need to understand what he wants out of this. And I get that he's busy, but he's got a few assistant ministers, and that would be helpful.
And he's the custodian of the system, isn't he? Ultimately, as the Health Minister, it's his, for the time that he's the Health Minister.
His job to deliver timely, equitable, best practice access for Australians to medicines, and in my case, cancer medicines. And I think he needs to be in the room on this. It can't just fluff it off to the Department of Health. That's not going to happen.
Let's wind the clock forward. So there's an outcome. What do you hope that we're talking about in 12 months' time?
I would love to see an improved level of trust between the department and industry, so that we don't have this situation where the first submission goes in at a price that we all know is too high. The department knows is too high, the industry knows is too high, so we all reject that, and then we start again 6 months later. People die in that time. I'm thinking of copywriting that phrase that, we can't have industry and government arguing about the price of the life jacket while the patient's drowning. As I said to someone the other day, if you reach in and you're looking for a chisel and you don't have one, then you pull out a hammer and a screwdriver and do your best. And that's not real good if you're a cancer patient, And I think we part of this process is part of the House of Reps inquiry made it really clear that people who know the toolbox isn't full enough.
Richard Vines, thank you so much.
Pleasure.